Greetings everyone, Ryan Ratliff here, fly tying manager and guide at Mad River Outfitters. Thanks for joining us today for another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to work on a simple caddis pattern. The reason for a simple caddis pattern, a couple different things. The caddis is a fly that we use a lot for dry fly fishing on the Mad, something that we use a lot in the state. This fly could be considered something what we would call a guide fly. A simple fly that you're going to fill up a row in your box with. You can change out the colors very simply just by changing dubbing, wing colors, different types of stuff. I'll break it down why I designed it this way and some of the different options that you can go with. Alright, so first off, we're going to pull out you just want a scud hook. So I happen to have some Tiemco 2457s in the vise. This is a 2X heavy hook. Some people might be thinking, wow, this is a dry fly, you're using a 2X heavy hook. You'll see why in a second, and I'll help explain it as we go too. But it's going to drop this in the vise. Alright. The thread, I'm going to pick the Vivis 12-0. This is in olive green. Pick whatever color is appropriate for the color pattern that you're going with. But I like to use this 12-0 for my dry flies. If you're new to fly tying, 12-0 thread is very, very fine, very, very thin, but the Vivis is probably the strongest in my opinion and the most versatile in that strength. So just go ahead and start the hook, or get some thread on the hook here. This is a scud hook, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit farther than the tie-in point, which on this hook the tie-in point traditionally is going to be about straight up from the barb. I'm going to bring this down pretty low, down to the curve of the hook. Alright, I'm going to grab some dubbing. This happens to be the Hairlines Microfine. This is in this, what they say, the PMD, or the yellow olive. This color is one of my favorite colors, especially for Ohio. So just going to dub some of this onto the thread. Just get it started there. Going to wrap this here. I'm going to go just a couple side-by-side wraps, nice and thin down here at the base. Get it just even. Starting to pull away a little bit, so just twist it. I'm going to get it nice and even. I'm not worried about if it, there's a little bit more olive in what color it really is. I just want to get a little bit of thinness there. Looking back over, I want to drop down just a little bit more. So I'm going to put on a little bit more. This first part real thin. A little bit fatter as I go down. Just going to work this back over here. If you had a rotary vise, it'd make it a lot quicker for you. This happened to have the Regal right now. Drop down just a little bit more there. Then I'm going to work that right up. I should blend it all in real good. Getting fatter as I get up toward the front. Bulb dubbing right there. See how it progressively gets fatter there? Alright, so now the next part. I'm not putting any hackle in this. Your traditional elk hair caddis would have hackle in the back. I'm not putting anything in there because I want this fly to sit with the butt right down in the water. Couple of different things. This could be an egg-laying caddis. This could be an emerging caddis. All kinds of different things. I don't know what the fish thinks it is, but it's doing a lot of different things for me. So the next thing I'm going to do, the underwing, some people use CDC. Some people use some Zelon. But I want this thing to float, and I want it to keep on floating, and maybe even with a dropper off of it. So I'm going to pull out some sheet foam. This happens to be the gray Dun. I've used it in olive. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. I'm going to pull out the razor scissor here, the tension scissor. I'm just going to cut a strip. Try to make sure it's nice and even as you cut it. Pop that off of there. Obviously, I'm not going to tie in a whole thing here, so I'm going to cut this down. Alright, and then if I just tie in a blunt piece like that, it's going to be so bulky for the tie-in point. So I'm just going to trim off a little point. make a little pencil point with it, and that's what I'm going to tie in. I'm going to kind of size it up. I'm a little bit long, so I'm going to trim off some of the tip. And over top of that foam, I'm going to pull back so it doesn't creep forward, and I'm just going to lash it down on the hook. Again, I got 12/0 thread, so I'm not pulling a lot of tension. I'm just using thread wraps. Alright, so I'm going to want this to be roughly come out to the end of the body. So I'm going to trim it off there. And if this was going to be a fly like I would be selling like for a custom order or something like that, we would make it look real nice. But again, this is a guide fly. Kind of a little bit choppy on the wing, but it doesn't matter at that point. Alright, so I still have plenty. I got about 2.5 eye lengths, hook eye lengths back. That's where I'm at right there. I am going to make sure my thread is nice and tight up against to that. I'm going to grab some elk hair. And this one I happen to just match it a little bit more of that dun gray color. So this is the gray elk, and this is the body. And yep. So I'm just going to pull off a little bit here. This one happens to be fairly thin, not large, super large in diameter, and not extra long, because I'm going to be cutting a bunch of it off. So just kind of look and see. Sometimes you can pull some off from the front. Sometimes you can pull some off from the back. Just kind of like how these are nice and straight in the back. Just going to pull a little clump off. Just going to kind of eyeball it and see if that's going to be enough. Yep. Little clump. Again, you're going to cut right next to the hide. Take your scissors, make the V, slide it right down to the hide, trim it right off. Now on this, there's a little bit of underfur. I'm just going to pull that underfur out. Maybe twist it a little bit, pull some of the underfur out. Then it's not even, so I got to get the hair stacker out. Drop it in the hair stacker. A couple taps. Pull that out. All the tips are all even. If you don't happen to have a hair stacker and you're just getting into the fly tying, then there's all kinds of different things that you can use. Back when there was film canisters, I used to use that when I was in junior high and high school, before the shop opened up and I found the shop, and then I can get a hair stacker. But all right, so I got that all even there. I'm going to size this up. I just want it to be a slightly longer than this wing. Not too long, but just slightly longer than that wing, that foam wing. All right, so once I get that eyeballed there, I'm going to grab it. There, I know right in front of these fingers is where I'm going to tie. So I'm going to go 2 loose wraps, keeping those wraps nice and tight back towards that elk hair. I just put some slack in it, and so that pulls away. Once that's there, I know I'm there. I'm going to give one more. I'm going to hold tension, just a little bit of tension. Adjust it just a little bit more, about 1/16 of an inch. That's where I want it, right there. All right, so now I'm going to eyeball and look like I'm creeping around a little bit on that side. I'm going to hold that back. Then I'm going to wrap that down. Make sure it stays up on top of there, up on top of that foam wing. And if your thread creeps forward a little bit, just wrap back towards that. Got it locked down. I'm going to wrap in front of it, pull the fronts back, the tips back, wrap in front of it, drop those back down. Lift up on the head. I'm going to trim this down just a little bit. It's a little bit long because I can always trim more. I don't want to overcut right at first because that kind of defeats the purpose of the fly. If it's too short, then I'm pretty much ruined it. Grab a little bit more dubbing. Real thin here. Real thin. Hold the top of the wing back. Again, not adding a lot of tension here, just nice and light. I don't want to flare that wing too much. Just well-placed thread wraps are what's going to hold this in. All right, about 3 or 4 wraps behind. Slide up my dubbing there, make sure it's all even. Pull back the head. This is the other reason why you keep the head long. So you can grab it. I'm going to pull that back. Wrap in front of it. Try not to trap anything. Tucking it nice and tight up against there. All right, now I got some extra dubbing. I'm going to pop this off. I'm going to whip finish, and then fine tune it up just a little bit here. Whip finish with this fine thread. You just have to make sure that you place everything nice and even, and don't go any more than 3 turns. All right, we'll do 2 sets of 3-turn whip finishes. Turn the vise just a little bit so I can see the eye better. All right. So now, do a little cosmetic stuff to it. Pull out the fine tip scissors. Got a couple, I'm going to tame up some of these hairs here. Now obviously I don't want this big of a head, so I'm going to blunt this down, shorten that up a little bit, just get nice and even, steady scissors. Trim that down. Alright, at this point I could take a little bit of UV or some other head cement or whatever and just touch up that if I wanted to. Again, this is a guide fly. Super simple, nice and quick. All right, so let's talk about the reasoning for some of this, for what's going on here. All right, so I need a fly that's going to float. I need a fly that's going to float, and it's going to maybe, it should be the point where I need to put some more floating on there, but it's just one of those things. You got a couple clients, you're going back and forth, whatever, but I want this fly to keep on floating. That oversized underwing of foam is excellent. It's gonna float on its own. You add the elk hair to the top, it's gonna add the wiggle and the shimmer, all the things that are great on an elk hair caddis, and add a little bit of flotation. The dubbing on the body. The dubbing on the body is a fine dubbing that can take floating very well, but it can also take things that will sink it. So sometimes, if I just dunk this whole thing in a liquid floating, like a Flagra or a high and dry liquid, something like that, and it'll float very well. It's a great panfish fly. It'll do a good job of that. If they're hitting caddis on the top, you can skate it, all kinds of stuff like that. But sometimes I want the bottom section of this fly to sink. So I might use the gel, high and dry, or maybe some royal gel on the wing up here. Maybe a little bit on the dubbing that I put at the head. If I want something with a little bit of shimmer in the wing, maybe I'll use some royal gel. This has a little more shimmer in it. But then I'll take something like the Henry Sinkit or some of the Snake River mud, the paste, and I will put it on the bottom part of that fly. That'll allow the body to sink down in the water and give a little bit deeper, lower profile. The combination of those two things makes it for a very diverse fly. I can do lots of things with it. This will also float a small nymph. I can do a soft tackle. I can do a midge pupa, even a tiny little tungsten bead nymph underneath there. You're doing the Euro style dry dropper type thing. So very simple caddis pattern. You can change up the colors to meet any needs that you have, and it is a quick tie, and you can fill a box with it. So thanks for joining us today for this quick simple guide fly caddis pattern. If you have any questions, make sure you contact us, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.
If you like this video, hit subscribe. It helps out a lot. And check out these videos. We think you might like them too.